Assalamu alaikum. Hello, Adabers. I'm Binish Ahmed. Welcome to Azaadi Now. Azaadi in Kashmiri means liberation and freedom. This is a show where we talk about current affairs in Kashmir with guests who shed light on what's happening and decolonial resurgence by indigenous people globally. Today, our guest is Mirza Saaib Beg. Mirza is a Kashmiri lawyer, a Kofi Annan and Wildenfield Hoffman Scholar, and a candidate of public policy at the Balvnik School of Government at Oxford University. He's a gold medalist graduate and a former student union president at Naslar University of Law. He's practiced law for over 6 years in India and is currently based in the UK. Mirza regularly contributes to seminars, writings, and efforts aimed at dialogue on legal and political issues on Kashmir. There's a concern around political Kashmiri prisoners. As you know, there are hundreds and thousands of Kashmiri political prisoners and detainees currently locked up. Can you tell us who they are and where they are and the conditions that they're facing?
Well, we only have names of the most popular names that have been going around are Mia Qayyum, Mashrat Alam, a few other people who are prominent people who are political dissidents
Mm-hmm.
who have been resisting the state. Now, specifically on Mia Qayyum, what I do want to point out is that there's no evidence against anything that he's
Mm-hmm.
done.
Mm-hmm.
Mia Qayyum he's an eminent lawyer. He's the president of the Bar Association of Kashmir. He was arrested on the night of 4th August, which is when most people began to be rounded up and arrested. And he's been in detention ever since. He's over 70 years old. He has various health issues, and despite all of that, he has not been given proper medical care through this. Through now, it's nearly 1 year to his detention now. That his trial was before the High Court earlier, and the High Court denied releasing him on the basis of his ideology. There is no evidence of anything he has said or done. But the High Court is saying that this man's thoughts are criminal. Uh,
Hmm.
the ideology of a person has been criminalized now. There is no actionable, uh, nothing actionable against him. But the first round of detention, it accuses him of being a staunch supporter of a secessionist ideology and his belief that Jammu and Kashmir is a disputed territory. Now, what I would argue over here is that even Indians should believe that Jammu and Kashmir is a disputed territory, because if it is not disputed, then does that mean the part of Kashmir which is under the control of Pakistan, have Indians given up on that? Of
Mm-hmm.
course, it is disputed. That's what the border shelling is all over. That's what China is fighting with India over. What is all that dispute about then if Jammu and Kashmir itself is not disputed? So to argue that Jammu and Kashmir, to say that Jammu and Kashmir is a disputed territory, it is not even wrong by Indian law, by Indian standards, because there is a dispute on Jammu and Kashmir. So to charge someone with detention for nearly a year now on the basis of an ideology that someone believes it is disputed, this is preposterous.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
Have there
pertinent to
been
mention.
appeals to have him released? What was the verdict? Where do things stand currently?
Well, what the High Court said is that and I'm reading from the order itself, the ground of detention. It reads that in view of various decisions taken by Union of India on August 5th, there's every likelihood that the subject, which is Mia Qayyum, will instigate the general public. So on this basis, they've held him in detention. And you see, as I mentioned earlier, that he is over 70 years old. He is at greater risk of being infected in the COVID pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And just 3 days ago, the Anantnag district jail. So on 10th of July, the first prisoner tested positive in that jail. And this was soon after various police officers had tested positive. About 19 police officers have tested positive now because they are the ones
Which
with
jail
contact.
is he being held in? Can you just tell our viewers again?
No, I'm talking about the Anantnag district jail right now. Mia Qayyum is
Right.
not there. I'm
Okay.
referring to, so the prisoner I was talking about is the brother of Maqbul Butt. He had
Okay.
tested positive after
Okay.
various police officers tested positive.
Mm-hmm.
And soon after, because see, the police officers are the one who have access to the outside world. They
Mm-hmm.
are also at greater risk of being infected. So
Right.
19 police officers tested positive, and the prisoners in that jail, it is obviously the infection is spread over there.
Mm-hmm.
So the first prisoner to test positive was Maqbul Butt's brother, who has been serving a detention over there since 2018. And after this, nearly 50% of the entire jail has tested positive. So out of nearly 190, 192 prisoners, over 96 have tested positive already. That's nearly 50% of the entire prison population that has tested.
Are there minors in this population?
Minors are frequently detained and arrested by the state in Kashmir. In fact, soon after August 5, the Supreme Court, their own committee, found that at least 144 minors were in detention. However, it was very interesting that the High Court of Jammu and Kashmir then came out with a report saying that no minors are in detention. And this is because often when minors are detained or arrested, there's no trail, there's no paper trail of their arrest. But in many cases, and I have observed many orders like this where Public Safety Act detention orders are passed even against minors. I can give various examples of these where the person against whom the Public Safety Act order. One example that I can give you is that of the detention of Ubaid Rashid Mir. Ubaid Rashid, he was first arrested by the police in connection with various FIRs against him. And his date of birth is 6th of February, 1997. Okay. So, and the date of the FIR registered against him is 2012. So he was probably 15 years old when that FIR was registered against him. And the reason I have the documentary evidence of this is because a Public Safety Act order was passed against him. An FIR is registered against him. So there is a paper trail. So we can identify.
And what was he being accused of?
Various things. Sometimes they are accused of waging war against the state, disturbing the peace, being a stigma for peace-loving citizens. We're talking about 15-year-old children, 12-year-old children.
Right.
In fact,
are there no juvenile protection laws that could overturn that criminalization?
Well, there are. Of course, we do have a Juvenile Justice Act in Kashmir, but often what happens is when the police registers the FIR, they change the age of the juvenile, so that the juvenile is reflected as a major and not a minor. And with respect to what you're just asking me of what they have even charged a 15-year-old with, the first detention order in one of these cases, which is dated 5th of September 2018, it admits that a majority of the FIRs that had been filed by the detaining authority were filed when he was a minor. But the grounds of detention, there are 3 grounds of detention, and it is laughable that this is being used against a 10-year-old, an 11-year-old boy. So there are 3 grounds of detention which have been filed against him at various periods. The first is where he's accused of being an anti-national. The second, which is fine, most Kashmiris are accused of being anti-nationals, but we're talking about a 10-year-old boy over here. The second is where he's accused of arranging huge gatherings in the year 2008 when he was 10 years old. So he has arranged you. It's quite, I mean, this is quite remarkable. If a 10-year-old child can arrange huge gatherings, it goes on to speak volumes at his talent. And the third charge against him is inculcating hatred against the government. This was in 2009 when he was 11 years old. So these are the charges that have been used against him. And his detention order reads, this is the exact wording, I'm quoting over here verbatim, that you have been granted bail in many cases, and there is every likelihood that the Honorable Court may grant bail to you in other cases also. And so it becomes essential to book you under the extraordinary law of the PSA, the Public Safety Act, under which you will not get bail. You can be held in administrative detention without access to a lawyer. So what the court is saying is that there have been various FIRs that have been filed against you, but you have been granted bail in them, which means that either the court has seen it fit to let you be free, not to let you be out of detention. And therefore, it has now become imperative to place him in detention. So there is no application of mind in these cases. And one fails to, it's how does a country claim to have a functioning, a democratic system of justice, system of court, system of law, when you have these kind of orders being passed by courts? And the detention order of there's one more minor who's 11 years old. His detention order, which is just from last month, this detention order is dated 27th of June 2020. I just accessed this last night. The detaining authority has relied on FIR number 77 of 2014. So they're relying on an FIR which is now 6 years old to say that as such, in order to maintain peaceful atmosphere in the entire district of Shopian, you are required to be kept out of circulation. So an 11 or 12-year-old boy has been charged, but he was 11 years old in 2014 when the first FIR was filed against him. So that FIR is being relied upon to now say that he has to be kept out of circulation to maintain peace in the entire district of Shopian. So
Mhm.
this is what we are dealing with over there, and it
Now,
becomes.
how does this juxtapose with the fact that India claims to be a democracy, and it's perfectly okay in a democracy for people to self-organize and to share similar sentiments and express dissent? How does that juxtapose, do you think?
India can claim anything, much like other countries can claim anything about themselves. The US can claim to be the world's oldest democracy
Hmm.
if they define democracy in a very narrow way. But the US is not really a democratic country itself.
Hmm.
It's the definite. Similarly with India, India can claim to be secular. India can claim to be socialist and democratic and just and equitable. But these are just words if there's no action on them. And you see all this sense of India being a democracy, secular, all these things, they come from the preamble of the Indian Constitution, which defines India. It said that we, the people, that is the Indian people, have given to themselves this constitution, and they have decided to create India into a secular, democratic republic with liberty, equality, fraternity, all that, blah blah blah. But if you assess each of those words from a Kashmiri perspective, what justice have Kashmiris gotten in India? What justice did Afzal Guru get? What justice did Makbul Bhatt get? What justice have the victims of the survivors of Kunan Pushpora, all the other rapes that are taking place in Kashmir? What have they gotten? How
Right.
many members of the Indian Armed Forces are serving a jail sentence for the egregious human rights violations that are taking place in Kashmir?
Hmm.
So that's on justice. Then, if we come to equality, when are Kashmiris treated as equal citizens or even as equal human beings in India? Are we given the same kind of respect that other human beings in India get? Or leave aside even Kashmiris, when do Indians treat even Indians with the same amount of respect? How are Dalits treated in India? How are the scheduled castes treated in other scheduled castes treated in India? How
Hmm.
is the caste system so rigid
And the
in
Adivasis
a
as well.
in this day and age? People who of scheduled castes have to remove their slippers when they're entering an upper caste village. If
Hmm.
a member of the scheduled caste rides a horse for his wedding or some occasion, they're often lynched for that. They're beaten for that. So, what kind of equality is this nation claiming? How can you even be proud of a nation that is exhibiting this behavior 72 years after your independence? If even to this day you have not been able to empower the weakest of your populations, the most vulnerable of your populations, then
Hmm.
what good is this independence for them? And I
Hmm.
say this even for Kashmiris who believe in the idea of independence. What good is that independence if we cannot guarantee the best possible life for the weakest sections of our population? If
Hmm.
tomorrow Kashmir becomes an independent nation and we continue to oppress, and we also do what has happened to India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, most of the subcontinent, where their most vulnerable populations are still suffering. Their most vulnerable populations, the lives of those populations has not really changed much. So
Hmm.
it's just the country that has changed hands from a British government to an Indian or a Pakistani government. But the most vulnerable populations are still suffering.
Hmm.
The women are still oppressed in all these societies. Look at
Thank you.
the
These
amount
are
of
really
violence.
important questions and points, and I think it really helps the viewers sort of understand the lay of the larger space and what's happening. Um, can you also tell the viewers and differentiate between prisoners who have been put in prisons, Kashmiri political prisoners within Kashmir, as opposed to being moved out of the Kashmiri
Well,
prisons
you
and
see,
to mainland India?
uh, the data suggests that Kashmiri prisons right now are already overcrowded. There is no space in Kashmiri prisons. There are 12% over capacity right now.
What's the estimated prison population in Kashmir?
Well, the recent data that I saw was that against a capacity of 3,200 prisoners, the 14 jails in Kashmir have 3,600 prisoners, and there are various other detention. These are prisoners on the rolls who are recorded. There are various detentions which are not recorded anywhere. There's no paper trail of them. So
Right.
that estimate goes well over many thousands. And there are many other prisoners who are in
Would you
jails in
say
India.
around 15 to 30,000?
I wouldn't say 30,000, but in the initial days after August 5, there were estimates given by various human rights groups based in Kashmir who said that the number is easily over 15,000. 30,000 might be a
On the
significantly higher
higher.
number on the highest. I wouldn't say it's 30,000, but definitely over 15,000 people for sure. Because if you count all the people who are from political groups, people who are, you see, they have even arrested people who go to mosques regularly. That's how the first wave of arrests took place. People who attend the mosques regularly because they know that that's where mobilization can take place. And say, for example, there are even people who are in jails in India who no one knows which jail we don't even know where they are, in which jail in India they are. Their families have only recently been informed of where they've been kept. So some are in Agra, some are in UP, in Uttar Pradesh, and some are in Rajasthan. So different jails in India they've been shifted to.
Right.
And this
And
is
so, what is
also a
the
recent
reasoning
change.
behind someone like Yasin Malik or Advocate Qayyum being moved outside of Kashmir? Are there political dynamics that explain that, or some have
Officially,
been left in within Kashmir?
yeah, officially, there is no particular reason given on why someone has been left in Kashmir and someone has been taken out of Kashmir. But strategically speaking, if you think from the perspective of the Indian state, you see the family members of these people, they'll have to travel. So if someone is detained in Agra or in Tihar jail, as many of these people are, their family members have to travel all the way to Tihar to meet them. Their lawyer has to travel to Tihar to meet them. It becomes more expensive. It becomes more onerous. It fatigues the families also. And that is the punishment that you are imposing on the people who are detained. Because you
Mm-hmm.
see, these people like Yasin Malik, these aren't people who fear detention. They know they will be detained. They know the path that they have set out on. So they don't fear being detained. But they are going to be harassed when they see their families, when they see what they're going through, the kind of treatment that their families have to keep going through again and again. Every time they go to these jails to meet their loved ones, they are frisked, they are humiliated, they are treated,
Right. By
mistreated.
non-Kashmiris, which have a different kind of empathy, perhaps.
Sometimes even by Kashmiris. You see,
Okay.
most of the JK police is Kashmiri, and
Right.
this is you have to understand this that all powers of oppression they will utilize the local populations to control you. Even the British did this. Who was in the British army? The British
Right.
army was full mostly of Indians. When
Mm-hmm.
General Dyer gave the orders to shoot at Jallianwala Bagh, who was pulling the triggers? It wasn't white men standing over there pulling the triggers.
Mm-hmm.
There were many Indian, present day Indians. What was the British Army? What has become the Indian Army right now was actually the British Army. So
Mm-hmm.
these armies carry forward their tradition of colonization, their mindset of colonial attitudes, and the country also has retained colonial legislations. The AFSPA, the
Right.
PSA, these all come from colonial legislations. So the attitude as well as the law has continued. So in essence, the colonial government never died. It just transferred hands from a visibly white population to a visibly local population.
Mm-hmm.
And my fear is that while we struggle for our rights, while we struggle for a better future for Kashmir, we have to be alive towards all the other struggles of the most vulnerable people in our communities. Because that is a part, that is what we are fighting for.
Mm-hmm.
We are fighting for the right to life with dignity for these people, so for a better future for them. And if we cannot guarantee that to them, then we will end up the same place where most of the nations of the subcontinent have, where they end up oppressing their own populations. So we have to be very alive towards these issues as well.
Mirza, you've been working on a report that's called Integration at Gunpoint, which looks at the political, legal, and economic changes in Kashmir since August 2019. Can you tell us a bit more about this report and what people can expect from it?
I've just made a small contribution to the report. I've written about the domicile law and
Mm-hmm.
an article titled "A State of Lawlessness,"
Mm-hmm.
which I cover how the Supreme Court has dealt with all the petitions on media and how they have dealt with the media petitions on Kashmir. But the report is very exhaustive. There are contributions from nearly 28 people who have covered various aspects of what has happened in the last 1 year, legal changes, political changes, economic changes, and so on. We have tried to represent or get a perspective of all diverse opinions in Kashmir from different identities. So we have a contribution from someone from Kargil who's talking about how Kargil rejects the Union Territory status and how there's a difference between Leh and Kargil. Ladakh is made of Leh and Kargil. So even if Leh accepts it or wants it, Kargil doesn't want it. So we have sort of delved into that. We have looked at the bifurcation of the state, regional politics that have taken place. We looked at the violence that took place across the LOC between India and Pakistan. This is in our politics section. One of the contributors has written on the United Nations update in this last 1 year. What happened at the UN? Another article we have is of an interview that I had conducted of a Kashmiri Pandit who talks about the struggle and where they find common narrative. What is the common struggle of Kashmiri Pandits and Kashmiri Muslims? There's also one on Article 370, what changes have taken place, where is the case in the Supreme Court right now. That has been written by one of the lawyers who's dealing with the case in the Supreme Court. And many teams had gone, after August 5, various teams of fact-finding groups had gone to Kashmir and they published reports. Some of them are included, some of the updates to their reports are included in this. The people who have written those reports, they have made contributions to this as well. We also have an article on the Public Safety Act, all the detentions that are taking place, how they've been detained, what are the orders that are used against them, what do the orders say, the detailed analysis of this. The full report is well over 300 pages, so it's quite exhaustive. And it's taken a lot of work of a lot of people to put this together. We have a section on economy in which we will cover the new policies that are changing in Kashmir on land, on tourism, on economy, and one on ecology, how the forests are being cleared, how tribal rights are being affected, the mining that is taking place in Kashmir, how those rights have been given to Indians. So all the data of what tenders came out, how they were given, that's been covered in that. Then there's a section on religion and culture in which, first of all, we're looking at how tourism is militarized. Amarnath Yatra, what is all this about? And how the Indian state has militarized tourism in Kashmir. And then we have two articles from two people of Sikh religion. One is a Kashmiri Sikh who lives in the UK, and he has spoken about, one of the articles talks about post Chatti Singh Pura, which was when Sikhs were massacred. How did reconciliation take place between Kashmiri Sikhs and Kashmiri Muslims? Where do Kashmiri Sikhs see themselves in this larger discussion, larger debate on politics in Kashmir? And can there be a common platform? Can there be a common narrative? And can there be a reconciliation? Because see, there's no animosity between Kashmiri Sikhs and Kashmiri Muslims the way there is between Kashmiri Hindus, that is the Pandits, and the Kashmiri Muslims. So can there be a reconciliation between, can we envisage a future together which takes into account all our different political views? Yeah, the only one request that I can make is that, as I said, a lot of people have contributed, have given their research and their time towards making this possible. And we are trying to look at all aspects of what has changed in Kashmir so that there's a record, there's an analysis and a record of what is taking place. But we would like to pay every contributor as at least a token of gratitude for their service. So we will put up a link in which people can donate whatever amounts they feel is justified. It's a 300-page report, so you can take a call yourself on how much you feel it is worth. But I can testify to the fact, because I've seen how much work is going, that everyone has put in a lot of effort. And the least we would like is to pay the contributors for the report. So if people can contribute whatever they feel they can donate, we'd really appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your knowledge and insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. You can find a link to this report in the description of the video below. Thank you for watching and listening. We would love to hear from you. Please share your thoughts in the comments, share this video, and subscribe to our channel. We also provide a link to our website and a donations page. Help us keep this show going and growing through your financial contributions. And take care.